everyone. Today in the studio we have my longtime friend, colleague, and an amazing artist, Ivan Komlinovic. Hello, Ivan. How are you?
Hello, Harris. Thanks for this introduction. I'm very good.
So we're here to talk about music and to talk about stuff that you are doing, that you have done, and also to about some things that can help some people that are making music and they want to find out more about production. And I know that you are a bit of an expert in the studio, so I thought, why not have a chat with you and talk about these things.
Okay, let's talk.
How addicted you are to music technology? What does it mean to you? Like, gear and stuff.
I'm pretty much addicted, but I'm not the guy who is willing to admit it. So I use technology every time I enter the studio, but still I'm thinking that everything I do with lots of equipment I'm using, it's possible to replicate with an ordinary laptop. So I'm using my initial procedures when making music are a little bit different than they used to be when I started with computers. So I'm more focused on my ears and my fingers.
Yes.
I entered the room with some initial idea, which might be some synth lines, some bass or rhythm part, never mind which is my initial idea. But when I do that, then I start to build a song from that point. And in this stage of my production, I'm focused to my Electron Octatrack as a central unit, and as well it's my main sequencer. So I'm playing the melodies, chords and stuff directly into Octatrack as a loops. And then I start to build ideas as building a rhythm section, putting some bass line or whatever it needs to be in this track. And actually, I can say that I am addicted to music, electronics and technology and new versions of software and plugins and things that most people use. But I'm also addicted to old pieces of hardware, to some old procedures to make music, and I think I'm addicted to connect both worlds. And this was my way to go to get kind of snapshot of the moment. I have some ideas and I want to do the sketch quickly. So this is my method to do that.
When somebody's addicted to something, it's it's a little bit of an obsession as well. But this obsession also can lead to kind of being in the studio a lot, exploring the equipment, just working really hard on what you love, obviously what you're obsessed about. So that led you to release quite a few records, right? And play live as a DJ and stuff. Tell me a little bit about this.
Well, I think that it starts like obsession, and then it goes into your DNA, and after that sometimes you are driving your car and think about the cables in your studio and what you can do differently. Yeah, it is obsession, that no doubt about. But I believe that the same thing goes with every situation in life that take you so much time, whatever it is, your day job, your sports activities, your dog. I have lots of obsession, and that might be a problem. So I'm doing lots of different stuff. I also like to connect my technical and musical experience to use it as kind of tools to do better videos.
Right.
It's kind of very interconnected, everything together, So very similar fields you can connect and you can expand and you can have more tools to express.
So obviously, when you love to do something, you know, like working in the studio, for instance, and making music, it's kind of, you know, you want to do it, so therefore you turn up and you do what you want to do or what you need to do, what you're making yourself to do. But also there are moments of, I don't really want to do this today. I don't really feel like writing music. I have to watch something on Netflix, or I don't know, whatever it is, but not go to the studio. Like when it comes to those kind of moments, how do you switch it and then say, no, I'm not going to procrastinate. I'm going to go back into the studio and do the shit? Or do you procrastinate?
Every day I wake up, I took a little piece of paper with some very short to-do list. It's not too much demanding, it's possible to do everything.
Right.
In some situation, some things are not done that day. And I have to do it, I have to do it day after. So there are few things like that. Some kind of work around music. It doesn't have to be composing new track. It doesn't have to be. I can use that day to take my soldering iron and to make new multi-core cables, or to do anything that is connected to my music, to what I do. Also, when I'm not in the mood to compose new music, I can watch tutorials, on YouTube.
Always good idea, huh?
The day is completed if I do anything of that. So I have discipline. I'm not kind of believer in motivation, because I'm never motivated to do anything. I'm pretty much lazy guy that has lots of things to do every day.
Right.
So my whole point is that I'm trying not to procrastinate, because it's very, very damaging habit. And if I'm not in the mood to do my workout, I will do something else. I will stretch, or I will take a longer walk with my dog. If I'm not in the mood to learn some new tricks from tutorial videos, then I do something else. I always find a way to have my time in the studio.
I see.
So if you are making yourself work every day, same routine, you don't enjoy it as much,
Okay.
So I really read my own red flags when something is about to be overkill for me.
I see. But what is the reward for you? Like, when you do it, obviously there has to be some kind of reward. Do you feel it's like an emotional reward, or?
Mostly emotional, of course, because we are not in the big business, but I feel kind of reward when I finish my day list and everything is crossed over. This is maybe biggest reward ever, because when I'm making music, I'm not when I'm into some track, I don't hear it the same way as I do 2 months later.
Right.
It's not the same experience. So important thing is that some process is done for today. It may be programming on my Octatrack. It may be recording the stems, because my routine is a little bit old school. Not because just I'm a little bit older, but I find that my perfect way to make music is actually to play live in the studio and to simultaneously record all channels involved in the track.
So record everything at once?
It happened at once, and I do multi-channel. I have lots of inputs in my mixing desk, so it's quite enough, always. And when this stage is done, I'm very, very happy. It's done, After that, I can go to next stage, which is mixing. So also in mixing stage, sometimes I reduce or I add something that I didn't have. I introduced some new sounds or ideas or don't know. So my music writing and production have few totally different steps. I never do it in one day. I'm aware that I can do it, but a little bit better observation of my work is if I divide it in the phases. So any phase that I finish in one day is big win for me.
Just making those steps and getting there, I think that's really the main thing. I think it's for all of us, especially when as you know, life gets in the way. You have things to do, but you still want to be together with music, and then it's a little bit of an art to swing it and just have the time and space to make music.
Yeah, of course, you have to be very organized.
So for those people who don't know, Ivan has released a few tracks on Laos, but the latest ones were Soft-Wired and Springtime. So Ivan, how are you happy with the tracks that you've done for Laos music? Were you happy with how they came out?
I actually am. Laos was one of my biggest wins, in my producer's career. And actually those two tracks were introduced as well in my live PA I do since 2015, and both of those tracks were played my first live gig ever. So Soft-Wired, I used to play Soft-Wired at least 5 or 6 times.
Right.
I decided to shift to more tech side, to my roots. So I don't play it as much.
Shall we have a quick listen to Soft-Wired?
Yeah, why not? Let's do that.
Let me spin it. Yes, so I quite like these little acid bits that you've got. They're a bit like birds chirping.
It was my old Vermona. I really love it. It's really small and extremely useful monophonic synthesizer. It's it's not bigger than 2 boxes of cigarettes, but the sound is huge. Reminds me on Moog. I have one Moog and really compatible sound, but the Vermona is much more aggressive.
I thought it's closer to 303. It's like between 303 and Moog kind of sound.
It's not close to 303, more to Moog side.
Okay. And the drums, do you remember how you made the drums and the rhythms and stuff?
I'm not sure I can remember how I did it, but I remember the tools I used.
Okay.
The whole drum was made with machine drum from Electron.
Right.
Then I was missing something, so I added later in the DAW percussions.
Right.
Because I had Electron machine drum without user wave, without samples, so it was only synth machine.
Okay, sounds good. Anyway, I've played it a few times out, and yes.
Thanks. I enjoyed the process as well.
Good, solid production. And also we have Springtime. But by the way, why did you call the first one Soft-Wired? Why did you call it that? Does it have a meaning, the name, or you just thought of?
There is no one of my track that has any meaning when it comes to names, because I'm really pissed when the track is finished and I have to think about names which could fit. So when I see something interesting, I write it down.
Right.
I have one huge list of different options for future tracks for names, and then I see, okay, this name will fit okay with this one, or I have kind of stash of names for my future tracks.
Right. Cool.
Softwired was kind of opposite of hardwiring. When you hardwire a device, you cannot change it like that, but can you imagine hardware device which you can softwire? It's like virtually modular device in the studio, something like that.
A little bit like a wireless connection with all the synths, with everything, with no cables or MIDI or nothing.
Maybe more like virus synth, which you can reroute in the computer, but the sound is real.
Oh, sure. I see what you mean. Okay, so let's hear the next one. Let's hear this Springtime. Yes, very cool, very nice. It really reminds me, like some of those bits really remind me on Matthew Johnson, the way he.
Oh, thank you. It's a big compliment. I love Matthew Johnson.
And this is what kind of attracted me to this track in the first place. You had those kind of melodies and grooves, and it was all kind of nicely in tune. And it worked. I think the this track really works.
Matthew is extremely good player, but I'm not. I was improvising until it was good, and believe it or not, but the main theme, this organ, is actually Moog.
Okay.
It's sub-fatty with lots of overdrive.
Yeah. It sounds very full, no?
Yeah. But also it's not fat, it's upper side of Moog, different side of the instrument. So
cool.
This was one of few tracks I was using it. I have a sub-fatty, but I'm not using it that much.
But you don't really have many tracks like this, have you?
No, I don't have many tracks like this. It was snapshot of the moment, because I'm not trying to force myself to produce my own sound. I don't do that. I just try to feel good when making music, and usually it can be predictor to get something that feels good to listen to as well.
Yeah, no, but yeah, these two definitely turned out good. I'm quite happy with the way they sound in the club as well. On the big system, and they sound really nice on studio or hi-fi system as well. So I think you did manage to get that balance right there for sure.
I'm glad you like it, because when you picked those two tracks, I was talking. I don't know to who I was talking, but I said, Haris took the best two tracks I had.
Thank you.
I think I was sending you more than two. It was like 5 or 6, and you picked those two, which was amazing, because I also thought those were the best.
No, I'm always happy, when I get the tracks like that I can play or even put on a label. Then that's amazing. But what do you think? Is there too much music today out? Are people releasing anything just to release?
Yeah, but the trick is that we all do it, because if you release it before you had some time to forget about it and to hear it fresh, you actually don't know is it good or not. But when you're in the releasing process, I believe that everything new that you have to offer to the labels, you do that, and if they pick it for release, it's not up to you to decide it. I believe it's really hard to be a DJ or any kind of musical editor today, because there is so much things you have to listen.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore, I admit. I only listen to vinyl releases, not because I only buy vinyl, it's far from true today, but it is one really big filter for me. You just cannot follow even small part of music that goes out every week. It's impossible. So I took the same old method I was using before, when I was exclusively playing records, and actually I consume and search for music the same way I did before, and it works for me. It's not a recipe for anybody else, I suppose, but it works for me good.
Another thing I wanted to talk about is vocals, use of vocals in techno. For me, vocals are very important, you know. In songs, you know, they tell a story. You can use them as an effect. You can kind of manipulate, chop them up, you know, trigger them in the sampler, or trigger the little slices. What do they call them? Vox chops. You know, vocal chops. You can do all that kind of stuff, you know, and run it through big delays and reverbs and flangers and phasers, reverse, and do all sorts of things. What do you think, like, use of vocals particularly in techno music? How do you look at the use of vocals in the machine? What is initially a machine-based kind of music production?
Well, you know, when I was a kid, when I started to do music, I was like very much against using vocals in the music, but only maybe first few weeks, because it's extremely fun to use vocals as an instrument. I have never used a vocalist as a main element of my music. I wouldn't go that far to say that you can use or not use something per genre, because why to limit yourself if you don't have to? As an artist, you can do whatever you want, but it can be masterpiece or it can be shit. And using vocals is for me something I do from time to time.
Right.
But I don't think about it as vocals. I think about vocals in my music as additional elements or different kind of music instruments.
Okay.
So I'm okay with using vocals different ways. You can do really nice tricks with vocals, but I don't pay too much attention to them as something very important. Some vocal part can be great idea to start something, and in that case it's really vital element. But if not, if I just use it as some stubby elements or something, you know, like I'm using percussions or some designed sounds, it's different role, you know, it's different hierarchy of the instrument in the mix. So
Right.
I'm okay with using vocals, but I wouldn't go that far to say they are very important for me.
I see. So I must ask you, you know, an inevitable question, you know, but it's not about techno or house, it's about hip hop and R&B. How do you look at the use of autotune?
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. You know, I think there is special place in hell for people who invited autotune, because I have never, ever heard anything with autotune usage that I like.
Yeah.
I know for some songs that I really love, they have used autotune, but you cannot hear it.
Okay.
You know? It's used on very subtle, but how to say it? still creative way, you know, not just corrective way. I suppose all those people know what to do with an auto-tune. Well, one friend of mine who is really experienced producer told me that the main thing with auto-tune is when vocalists use it when recording, when they know what they are doing.
Okay.
So in really rare occasions, I can say auto-tune is a good thing, but in most occasions I hate it. You know, I completely cannot stand the music which is completely auto-tuned.
Can't fucking stand autotune.
No. I hate.
Okay, all right. Okay, I get it. Fucking hell. All right. So, but what about the use of vocoders, for example?
Vocoders are different stories.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I believe most of us that are born late 70s discovered vocoders through like Kraftwerk or Herbie Hancock.
I was the one. Me too.
I was totally blown away with these robotic voices, and in old school electro tracks, it's also extremely welcome. I love the vocoders. I love how guys from Daft Punk have used it.
Right.
Vocoders can be cool, but I personally never use vocoder. I use it only like on drums to get some really different kind of percussive sounds, but I have never used it on vocals.
Tell me, how do you use it on drums? Like, tell me about this. That sounds interesting.
You program drum loop and play with vocoder with this drum loop, and then you get something a little bit weird, but nice kind of weird.
Run the drum loop into the vocoder.
Yes.
And then you give the vocoder a certain frequency, right?
Yeah, and you can change it and you can do whatever you like, but it's not anymore typical drum function of this element, but you can get some layers of weirdness in your track that you may or might not like, but it's fun process.
But look, for example, if you have your track in A, and A is what, 55 hertz, right? It's fundamental 55 hertz. So if you have, let's say, a drum loop going through vocoder which is set to 220, it's gonna go in tune with the fundamental of A. So that's actually a really good idea, how to give your drums a little bit of tone.
Yeah, some kind of weird harmonics.
Yeah, that's a really good idea actually. I think, guys who catch this, I think they'll have fun trying this in the studio, no?
You can use whatever you like. This is just one small example of what I was doing with. I have really humble experience with vocoders, but this is it. I use it only for drums making more rich, more interesting, some percussion, getting more percussive, synthetic percussion sound from this drum.
How do you approach making beats? Do you put the kick in first, or you try some percussion, or you try some hi-hats? Like, what's the process? What's your process of beat making from not using the loop, but just from fragments, from elements? How do you construct the beat out of elements?
First thing I'm trying to predict the whole context. So when I have some elements done, or just one element, and it's not a drum, then I go to drum machine, and then I decide what kind of signature I'm going to use. I actually mostly use 4/4. That's my weapon of choice. I'm making techno, but then I'm trying to just to program in few seconds a basic skeleton of my future track.
Okay.
And after I did that, then I try to approach to sound design, actually not sound design, but to edit sounds on my drum machine,
right.
to get what I want, to put all the parameters of certain drum or percussion that it fits the original idea. You know, sometimes it's snappy kick, sometimes it's 808, sometimes it's since I use analog rhythm, I can also use samples in some cases.
Do you use samples with analog rhythm?
Sometimes I use samples, yeah. Sometimes I do the synthesis drums. It depends on the situation, on the track, on the context. You know?
Cool.
So I use everything that it's possible, you know, for me to use. And when I program like 2 bars loop, I'm trying to focus on the boringness, how to avoid it, you know. I put it to play, and then I go to do something else. I'm dislocating myself from my listening position and trying to see how it works for me, how it sounds. Is it boring or not? Because if not, if this 2 bars loop is okay with me and I'm able to listen to it more than like few minutes, then it's a good start. Then I find it's a good start. And then I do all the tweaks that I can do in the first phase of my production process.
Right.
And the next thing is I'm building the other elements. When the first initial idea is here, when the beat is more or less prepared, then I'm trying to make it more complex, do something that can perfectly fit the track I had in mind. So when I do that, I just record and I play with everything that gets under my fingers, and I'm trying to make it as alive as possible in this stage, you know. So I'm tweaking the knobs, pushing the faders and buttons and whatever. So for me, this is the vital part, phase 2, when I'm recording, because all the changes on the instruments are done live. It's kind of I play like I do live jam like 20 minutes, 25 minutes long, and then we go to phase 3, which is reduction. So you have recorded multi-channel jam, and then you just delete what you don't like.
Okay.
So it's really easy to do because you just put the right tempo in the DAW, and you have perfect grid, and you just can snap your scissors tool, to the grid, and you remove like I remove like 8 or 16 bars of the parts that I don't like. And if things jumps too quickly in these cutted parts, I can do automation, or I can search for the part of the track where I actually did that change of like attack, release, like envelope, filter, or whatever I touch in the live part. So when this part is done, when I reduce everything I don't like, then I go to reducing arrangement, and then I'm practically done. Then I just need to mix, and that's it. Last stage is of course mastering, but I never master before like few weeks after it's mixed.
Good stuff. Yes, well, you said quite a lot there. I mean, I wanted to go back to what you said about, when you think that the part might be boring or not. Obviously, we really like, as people, we really like repetition. It's like it's in our DNA. Repetition. It's kind of something that we love it, and
we have hearts. Heart is kind of repetitive percussion.
Some kind of sync, and if people want to find out about it, there's plenty of research. There's free papers on internet about it. You know, there's an article. It's actually called, you know, Why We Love Repetition, and it actually explains all the psychological, you know, kind of mechanisms that you know, make you like repetition. But then also, you know, there is a certain thing that is called too much repetition, you know. So when do you think repetition is too much? And like in the arrangement, you know, like how long? 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes before you change something, you know. And also, you know, what you do to, as I said, what you do to break up the track, you know. So to break up the repetition a little bit.
Well, I don't have a rule for that. I just think that if I'm not able to listen my own rhythmic pattern for more than few minutes, I erase it. Simple as that. And I'm not trying to get kind of typical arrangement with, you know, long breakdowns and the elements that can let listener to have different perspective and then to get excited when it goes back to the old way. I don't think about the music that way, because most of my favorite ever tracks are they don't have that kind of emotional drifts, so they are more or less reduced in the arrangement. They have some small changes that make you interested, but nothing that make you strip off your t-shirt, you know.
Of course, or put your hands in the air and stuff like that.
My main focus is to make it not boring to me.
Right.
And to be able to do that, I have to play in the first stage of the process with different tools like LFOs.
Right.
You know, I apply LFOs to different things like cutoff filter or panning or something that makes this part of the sounds I'm using more alive.
Yeah,
you know, like,
but that's exactly what I was asking, you know, how do you make these subtle changes?
Not every hit is the same strength, you know, so you change velocities to get that kind of feeling. Sometimes I play with micro timings, you know, I move elements a little bit off the grid.
Cool.
On top of that, I'm using, of course, effects. So I have few that are always there. I have a little bit reverb, a little bit. You almost cannot hear that it's present, but it's there. I have really nice lexicon unit which I'm using almost in every track. I like to play with delays.
Nice.
Two type of delays. I have a really old Boss unit I really love. It was I think the idea of this Boss unit was to have all guitar pedals they have in one unit, and I got it extremely cheap, so I'm really happy with that. Right. And the one I really use all the time is tape delay from Strymon.
Tape delay is actually really good.
Tape delay can be really good, but sometimes I can do some overkills with tape delaying, so you know, good thing is I can cut it out in the mixing process.
So you said that you use chorus a lot as well, no?
Well, I have it on my send on the desk, so you know it's few steps away to just add it. You know, it's actually really easy to get wide and deep sound with choruses.
Right. So is this what you use to make your sounds wide?
Mostly, yes. And if I want more extreme versions of wide, then I use some mid-side processing. And sometimes some layering or whatever.
Do you like to sample records? Do you like to sample stuff?
No, I don't. I like music that is sample based, but to do it right you have to be a digger. You know, you have to find something really special and original that nobody else used to be like legit sampling tool.
And hopefully not get sued for it.
Hopefully, yeah. Good luck with that.
Let's talk about this kind of notion of, you know, how can we do something so they don't catch us, you know? People like that. Obviously.
You tell me, I don't know that tricks.
Maybe you can think of something. Look.
Okay.
What needs to happen? You take a sample and you use it in your track. But you have to use it in a way that the algorithm doesn't recognize. Algorithm cannot really recognize if you're using only slices. You know, if you just use, if you shuffle it, you know, if you take a loop of like really famous record, Michael Jackson, whatever you want, and then you chop it up into slices and you just randomize the slices. So you just basically use some sounds, you don't use other sounds. So you've used the sample, but there's no fucking way that algorithm is gonna get it, you know, because it's so chopped up and randomized that. But then at the end, it's not the original sample anymore, right?
No, it's a new song. I think that art of sampling is special discipline in music production, and I really love it. But you know, for legal reasons, things changed like 20 years ago. Not sure, but I think it was like period. You know, old hip hop records are mostly based on good samples.
Yes.
I'm not sure how short sample can be to get under the radar.
Probably very short.
I have to admit that I used actually a sample of a really famous record from really famous band.
Right.
But I used like
a fragment.
Extremely short chunk of the trumpet, which doesn't sound at all like a trumpet. I use it to re-synthesize. You know, I was this small fragment was in the loop, which made some really irritating noise until I used a low-pass filter on it. So I played with filter through the track, and it actually sounds really good. And I don't think nobody will ever find out what it is.
Now listen, sampling is a tricky subject because obviously it involves music business. But before we talk a little bit about music business, I wanted to show you this thing here that I have, and then something like this, right? So
Okay.
it's just
okay. I think I have it here.
So what this is, it's actually some of my research. I was digging through tracks as we do because we love music. You know, I've actually wanted to find out how tracks are constructed. You know, how they move, because you know you have your way of working, I have my way of working. But you know, there are a lot of people that are making music. You know, and in lots of different tempos, in different genres. But then the dynamics are more or less the same, you know, across all music. You know, you're thinking that, you know, maybe a classical piece is not gonna have a dynamics like a techno track will, but you know, some tracks they go so low in dynamics, they're kind of, you know, you can hardly hear there's any sound, you know, for a few seconds, and then it starts building up to like this like really massive crescendo, and then it just bangs, like, you know, at the top. So the dynamic range, as we call it, is very, you know, it's very wide. You know, so how do you look at dynamics in tracks, and how do you construct your tracks like in this sort of way? When you start from the beginning, you have a middle and the end, or, you know, how do you look at the track as a whole? Because also, before we hear the answer, is the it has been said that the real composer or real master or real producer or whatever you want to call it, like the creative person, is the one that can envisage the piece from the beginning to the end in their head before they start making music. So do you ever do that as well? So that's two questions, I guess, but it's the same question.
No, man, I'm very ordinary kind of producer, so I'm really far away from this genius. But talking about dynamics, it depends. It actually can really depend on material. I cannot, to be more clear, I don't have a detailed explanation about that, but it's such huge difference in different genres of music and situation when you can actually have some benefit from wide dynamical range.
Right.
In some cases it's not so welcome because you just want to keep the same energy for a longer time, you know. So but I think that in some ways dynamics in longer term of listening or consuming the music, it is something very necessary, because if there is no any kind of dynamic for longer period of time, you get fatigued. It's not enjoyable anymore.
You think when you hear the DJ that just bangs and doesn't stop, it just goes from the beginning to the end, just bang and nothing else. Is that what you mean?
Yes and no. So some DJs are so good with that approach that I'm actually very careful how to phrase this thing.
Right.
There are DJs that keep the same amount of energy for like 2 hours without any significant changes of arrangements, and it sounds amazing. So especially in techno, you know, it's and sometimes some really unexpected low parts, let's say in some kind of dynamical way, can be real refreshment. You know, they can, if you have that thing repeating too often, it gets cheesy.
Yes.
It really depends on the situation. I will stop here because we can, you know, get really tangled with this different scenarios.
But what I've noticed is that a lot of people don't understand dynamics, and you know, you're a mastering engineer as well, right? You mastered some of my tracks too, you know, and I was actually quite happy with the way you pumped them up to make them sound, you know, beefy, and you know, you got something out of them that I maybe wouldn't necessarily get out of them, you know. So I think, and that's the whole point of mastering, right? The whole point is really to, you know, in a certain way, you know, keep what somebody has done, but also enhance it, you know, and take it to another level. And I think you've done that really well. And coming from, like, you know, and I hear like so many times from mastering engineers telling me, like, tell people when they send me tracks not to put the limiter on the master, you know, don't limit the track before you send it, or don't use compressors so much, you know. There's a saying that I've got, it goes, too much compression is likely to compress your chances of your music being played in DJ sets, in clubs, in radios, because it's too fucking compressed, you know. So, and I don't think a lot of people don't understand that you actually have to have parts in the track where there's, you know, even if it's just like a really short fill, you know, when you have no kick and bass, you know, and it's really quiet, and then, you know, the kick can come through, you know, because the compressor can also come back to the, you know, to zero, and then, you know, you get the attack from the first kick in the section, right? You know that as a mastering engineer.
There is also thing in electronic music. There is the electronic instruments have not the same dynamical range, like, you know, when you are recording orchestra part in the big room. And the thing is that sometimes it's better not to intervene dynamically if you are mixing engineer and you think everything sits fine.
Right.
There is no obligation for you to put compression on some elements or drums or whatever.
Right.
If you did everything well in deciding about how loud any instrument sits in the mix, if you did really detailed EQ, if you did everything you have to in first stages of mixing, right? Maybe it's not necessary to use compression just to have it. So I tried both approaches as a writer, you know, and producer and mixing engineer and so on. I tried, to be honest, sometimes tracks that I killed with compressors sounds good, but sometimes they just don't. You know?
Okay.
I don't have my favorite settings or unit that I use like on snare drum. I really don't. In most cases I don't use anything, you know, in the mixing stage. Or sometimes when I want to make it snappier, I have like few possible compressors that can let the transient out and everything else gets squashed and a little bit even distorted, you know, and it can sound really interesting. But it's not a rule. I don't think it's a rule, and if you don't have really good reason to put some processing on the track, why do that?
Yes. No, you're right.
You can try it or you can remove it. It's everything is allowed, you know, but sometimes when you are, how to say it, in this tunnel vision, you know, you and your DAW, and you don't see out of it. Sometimes you have to remove yourself and to see what actually works for you, what fits. Because I'm the first guy who did, in my first productions, during the process, I overprocessed everything. All my tracks had too much low end, you know. All my tracks used to be too much compressed, didn't breathe. And I exactly knew what I did wrong, and I did it all over again, because it's such fun to use compression, but this kind of fun sometimes destroy the enjoyment of the music.
The answer, you know, in this really difficult situation to compress or not is to, of course, compress, but to use parallel compression. You know, the New York style compression, where you have a dry signal and really heavily compressed signal, and you blend it in, right? You know that, and it's you know, it's. I think that actually gives a channel or a group. I think you should only do it on groups of things, you know, like on the drums. So the whole drums then parallel compress through like a nice compressor, and with really fast settings as well, you know, with really fast attack, fast release, right? And not much threshold, and then you can pump up the body into this. Or you can dial in, as Americans say, you know, you can dial in the punch, you know, something like this. All in all, you know, whatever we do, as many tracks as we put out, you know, and as much as you try, it's very hard to succeed if you're not a part of some sort of organization or some sort of team or some sort of group that kind of, you know, helps each other and, you know, kind of works for each other's interest. And you said to me that there is a new organization in Zagreb.
Yeah, we finally have official representatives of DJ profession, and now it's part of Croatian Musical Union, which is #1 institution for musicians, and actually that makes us musicians as well. So, well, it's good news. I'm not involved directly, but I'm very happy to see that happen.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's actually good thing for all of the DJs in Croatia, you know, to have some kind of, you know, backing, because it's easy to say, you know, DJs this or DJs that, you know, but then if you have a body that actually legally represents, you know, this profession, which is obviously, you know, a big time profession for some, you know, making tens of thousands of dollars or whatever, you know, and it's kind of, it's good to be able to have at least some kind of protection, you know, if you're doing DJ work.
It's very important to have to have some part of bigger musical organization that can in your name change some rules of game that are really old, you know. So there are lots of things that these guys have to do, and I wouldn't enjoy to be in their shoes, but one of the most important at the moment is to get even lower prices of the DJ licenses. They do that kind of stuff, you know. Because when a Croatian copyright agency did that new regulative, they actually didn't consult DJs because they didn't know is there any legitimate representation for the whole profession. So I believe this kind of administrative things is something that this is important organization to have.
What do you think that it's important for new producers, for people who are getting into music production to know? Like, what would you tell yourself if you are 18 now and starting music production career? Or something like that, you know? Like, advice to new producers.
Lots of things, but the main one is to dissect the music you like. I did that. It helped me really a lot to try to determine all elements and how did they do that, you know. And of course only in the tracks you really like, that really work for you, and try to use those tricks you learned just by listening in the context of your game. So to be able to do that, you have to read a little bit about, of course, music theory, about synthesis, about using DAWs, about mixing tricks. There is lots of stages you have to cover just to be able to know how make some idea alive, or only part of the idea, and you will find a way how to make it work all together in later steps. So I think lots of attention on the topic that it's your game. If you are, of course, electronic music DJ, it's really useful to listen to a little bit wider spectrum of this genre that you like, a wider spectrum than you plan to produce. So you can also use some neighbors' tricks for your own production.
That's great.
Those stupid thoughts that I have helped me, but it's not a rule, but I believe that every kind of analysis of other work can get some good recipes for your own.
No, for sure. No, 100% I agree with you, you know. And the only thing I can add to that is that you really need to find out what the elements are that are inside the tracks in order to be able to know where they are in the track, if you know what I mean. You know, somebody needs to know what the elements are, you know, what is this element, what is that element, how they work together, and the combinations of those elements throughout the track. Because it's normally like 3 or 4 main elements that are together throughout the track, maybe drums, bass, and a stab, and then maybe like a bass and stab and, I don't know, a solo line, you know, and then maybe kind of just a kick drum and the bass and filter the loops or something like that. But there's never too much in one moment. But they might be too little for some people in certain moments. But certainly, I don't think you can have too much in certain moments, because then the track, it just becomes mush. You know, more you put into it, it's like cooking. If you put too much stuff in the pot, it all blends together into a mush. You know, so I'd rather have like a defined elements than the mush, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but that's why you have magic button on every mixer.
What is it?
It's M button. Mute. So you mute.
That's a magic number. Nice. Yeah, I didn't hear that before. Thank you.
Magic button, you know. I did more good result with mutes than with adding some new elements and introducing some more chaos, you know. Sometimes it just makes everything more clear, more free.
Listen, I have a friend, Maro, here in Dubrovnik. He works in the reveling club, you know, like when it's working, he does the lights. And
I know Maro, yeah. Hello to Maro.
I saw him the other day, and he said, "You don't need to put more in there. You just need to turn it up."
Yeah, that's true.
I think we can close with that. No, you don't have to put more in there. You just have to turn it up, and it's gonna sound good. No, hopefully. Nice speaking to you, Ivan.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you over technology that we are addicted. It's like infusion, right? And I wish you all the best with your new material, and definitely looking forward to your new stuff.
Thank you. You will be updated really soon.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
So do you. Bye.